Welcome to the Talent Culture Podcast. Learn how the most innovative companies implement culture and make it part of their strategy. On the Talent Culture Podcast, we're interviewing business professionals on how they prioritize onboarding and culture, bringing our own expertise and experience from working with dozens of companies on exactly this. The Talent Culture Podcast is an actionable strategy guide that can either help you implement these strategies in your company or learn how you get buy-in from executives. Your host is Søren Bolvig, CEO at Empact. Enjoy.
Why is it so difficult to implement new procedures like new HR policies, GDPR policies, security policies, and etc.? We know from several research, for example, Harvard, that says that about 70% of all change projects, they fail. So why is it that they fail? And I think most of them also agree on why they fail. It's lack of communication. It's the lack of explaining to the organization why are we implementing this new standard? What do we benefit from it as a company, but also what do you benefit from it as an individual? And I think especially the last part is important. If you are able to explain why and what the individual person gains from this new standard, then I think there's a much higher degree of success or buy-in from each person. For example, if you take one of my favorite examples is time registration. Everybody hates it. Everybody just sees this ad. They would like to measure my efficiency. They would like to, if you are in a consultancy firm, how many hours can I bill, and so on. What we as a management sometimes lack to explain is that if we take this hour registration and turn it into a tool also for creating transparency. So for example, if you are in Aarhus or in New York or wherever or whatever it is, and you compare two physical location on a task, if they're time registration, and the one location uses 10 hours on the task, and the other location uses 100 hours on the task, then there is do they do the same thing? Or have they just found a magic cure of doing it differently, or much faster, or much smarter? So it's about how do you then make sure that we share the best practice? And you cannot share the best practice if you don't know what you're measuring. And if you are capable of telling that story to the person who needs to time register and also come back with the result, this means that we actually can do this much, much faster. Here actually is a new procedure for you. Then will you be able to do your job much faster and much more efficient? Isn't that smart? Then I think you will get that time registration without any trouble. And the next part of it would be like how, if we start a procedure or a change, which a new procedure is, do we then measure the result constantly? And also when we get the result, do we then change or get the feedback and change some of the procedures that we're already doing? Many organizations, they start out a change or try to implement a new procedure, and by having pushed it out, the organization have pushed out the memo, it's done. But it's not done. Nobody lives it. I think only the management, they live it because they have already thought the whole change process through, and for them it's already done. But all the people that need to receive the communication need to understand why, what the benefit is, why we do all of that, and that takes time. And they also need, and the management also needs to be able to handle the feedback they get. So if, for example, if this new procedure demands that you need to log on to a certain system with a new password that you often forget because you don't remember it, and then you need to log on, and then you need to fill out this form on 20 questions, check, it becomes a hassle. So you need to make it, and then you get the feedback from the employees like it's too difficult. Then you need to take the feedback seriously and actually answer back to the employee, we'll consider your feedback, this is possible, we may change it, or it's impossible to change due to this and this. As long as you take the feedback back and you take it seriously and you react to it, if you can react, of course. The reaction could also be impossible to do, but you need to react towards the employees because else they just feel that this has just been pulled over them. This is just a new procedure they need to do, and they don't understand why. And whatever we say against it is just going to be considered as crap. In order to have a smooth implementation as possible, which probably don't exist, I would say that the key things to remember is to have a clear goal and communicate again and again clearly why are we doing it and what's the gain for both the company and for you as an employee. What do you gain from it? And then you have to make it as frictionless as possible for the employee to conduct this new procedure. And that also means using tools to make it simpler. If you, for example, need a password to log on to the system, can you use your biometrics? Is that a possibility? And again, if the form consists of 20 questions or whatever it is, tick boxes, can you then shorten it down to 20? All of this make it as easy as possible for the employee. The next thing, of course, is then to take the feedback from the employee. If they come with feedback, consider it, respond, that you should do every time. And the next one would then be measuring it. Make sure that the results from the new procedure you have implemented is clearly communicated, not only to the management itself, but also to each employee. And that also means the positive result. For example, we also have the tendency to say that now we improve the efficiency with this and this due to this new procedure. But what about if it's about safety? What about we had no accidents in 3 months? Or we had no security breach in 3 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And then I would say, why don't communicate that? Due to the perfect implementation of this procedure, we have had no cyber attacks we had cyber attacks, but we prevented them for the last 12 months. In that way, the employee would also feel, and we also feel as a management, that this procedure actually works. One thing is measuring it, and actually being very clearly about the benefits of it, and also the positive benefits of avoiding things, but also make sure that if you're talking about different departments that have to implement something, make sure they all buy into it. I have seen several places that you may, as a top management, agree on why it's a good idea. And then you almost send out the memo, and it's HR need to carry it on if there's something with HR or security or whatever. And then they try to force it down in the organization, try to convince the middle management they should do this and this. And sometimes, if you come as a middle manager or as a senior manager, whatever, and don't really buy into it, cannot see why we should do this, and actually try to force this to the organization without having, your personal backup on it, it will probably fail because you cannot explain why. You're just passing on information that you really don't believe in. So it's actually, you need to see the reason for yourself, both as a manager, senior manager, middle, whatever it is, and then be able to communicate it, convey it further to each employee. And then you will probably have a high degree of succeeding with your change plan. Another thing would be like, if you as a manager, for example, me, I hate procedures per default, but it's just, I know we need to have them. Though I'm always forced to think, how can we make it as easy as possible? How can I make it as easy as possible for myself? And how do I actually work in this environment? So, and that's where the feedback to myself or the feedback to organization would be like, if I have to find a new security standard, for example, I need to follow those rules of GDPR. I will always challenge, can we make it easier? Can we make it more flexible? And that's the same, each employee wants to do. How can we make it as easy for me to carry out the task? Because I honestly think that most of us would just want to do your job as best as possible, and at the same time do it even better and try to, evolve during our daily lives. So I don't think anybody's against procedures. Some of them, of course, are bound by law, and we just need to do them. I think, for example, I have my favorite example is the whole financial institutions where you read the laundry of money and force them to have procedures as long as I don't know, but they're just forced to. And what they, of course, are trying to do is then try to create system where some things are automated and have an easier interface, make it as easy as possible, because this just needs to be done. There's no immediate benefit for the individual employee. Not maybe they have a job if the bank doesn't go bankrupt, but that's the only thing, and that's I would say not a super valid argument, but it is trying to be then flexible you can be in carrying out this new procedure. So it's all about, as an individual or an employee being heard, and we as a management, of course, try to implement things that are good for the company and for the employees in order to achieve a common goal.
This was the Talent Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.